I've had the idea for this bag for a while now, but originally I didn't intend it to hold a tent. It was I more had it for the idea to hold a bedroll, some extra clothes, maybe some food. I did a few different concept sketches of what it might look like. When I originally had the concept in my mind, I kind of pictured it as having a flat surface on the top that meets up with the bottom of the backpack. And then I thought maybe it should have a flat surface on the back as well, or rather on the front, so that, because I was still trying to solve that issue in my head of I don't want it pressed up against my butt when hiking. I also originally pictured it being a lot bigger because I thought maybe it might be a good way to hold a sleeping bag. So I started with a much bigger circle originally and thought about just cutting the edges off and figuring out my seam allowance from there. But I ended up scrapping the idea of having a flat surface on the two sides. The main reason I scrapped that idea of having the flat surfaces was because I realized that once I loaded up and cinched down the compression straps, it's not going to matter that I sewed those two flat surfaces onto it. It's just going to take whatever shape it takes. So after that, I started coming up with the idea for the compression straps, or rather I guess they would be more load lifter straps that hook onto the bag somewhere, hook onto the pack somewhere, and then I cinch them down and it would pull the load away from my butt. I had to give some thought as to what I wanted in these load lifter straps, and ultimately I wanted them to be removable from the duffel. I didn't want them permanently fixed. I wanted them to have some sort of quick disconnect like a buckle or something. And I didn't want them getting in the way of the zipper or any of my other pouches. I really just wanted to, even with them in place, I still wanted to be able to just undo the buckles, get into the zipper, get my items out, and close everything back up. The big problem I was having was, how do I get it on and off of there easily? If I was to use, two more side release buckles for the load lifter straps, how would I, get it through the loops of the PALS webbing up here, or how would I get it through a D-ring if that's how I decided to mount them on the duffel. When I saw these hooks, I realized that if they're just attaching to a piece of folded over webbing, I can pretty much get that piece of folded over webbing through anything I needed to. So that's ultimately why I decided to go with these hooks. Originally, because I knew I was going through these two loops of PALS webbing on the backpack, I wanted them sort of in line on the duffel, and I realized that the gear loops sewn to the backpack underneath aren't in line with these two loops of PALS webbing, so I originally decided to mount some kind of piece of hardware onto the duffel that would be in line with these loops. So originally I actually had these two D-rings mounted here just next to the compression straps, just above the zipper. And when I tried it out the first time, it just didn't work out. There were two problems. The main problem was when I run the strap through those D-rings and cinch it down, there's just not enough room left over for me to cinch down tight, and it just wasn't pulling the bag far enough away from my butt. The other problem I realize is you're basically sewn right into the cordura, and if you're trying to cinch down hard on that, you run the risk of basically ripping the cordura by ripping out those box X stitches. So I realized that the answer was I needed something that attached to the compression straps themselves so that I wasn't pulling against the material of the bag. So since I didn't need those D-rings mounted here anymore, I just seam ripped them apart, cut them off, and ultimately I ended up sewing them to the side panels here, because not only does that make not only is that a better place to mount a shoulder strap if I want to use this as a regular duffel, it also functions as a zipper pull, or in other words, something to pull against as you're opening and closing the zippers. You could see here on one of my original concept sketches, I started off with just some nylon webbing as a gear loop sewn right onto the cordura. Eventually I came up with the idea of a ring held into place with a box X stitch and some nylon webbing. When I eventually realized that the answer was to connect the load lifter straps to the compression straps on the duffel, I had to rethink these gear straps, and I ultimately decided to not change the idea of these load lifter straps, and I realized I could just put a metal ring onto the compression strap. Now I wanted these as far down as I can get them so that I can do the most cinching on the load lifter strap, but I didn't want them below the zipper, because then I would have to disconnect the load lifter strap, get it out of the way, then open the compression strap, then open the zipper. I didn't want to do all that. I wanted the load lifter straps out of the way, so pretty much down as far down as I can get them was at that buckle. If I make another bag like this, what I might do is have these buckles land a lot further down on the bag. That way I can still hook the load lifter strap up just below the buckle, but it'll be a lot further down on the bag. I can cinch down a lot more and lift the duffel a lot further away. I also honestly might just rethink the whole load lifter strap idea one more time, because these work. They don't work as good as I want them to. And part of the problem is just when I have my other pouch mounted here at the bottom of the bag, it's kind of complicated to feed them through, feed them back the other way, hook them up. And a big problem I have is that before I cinch them down, these would be down here underneath the pouch. Well, in order to cinch it down, I have to feed them up through behind the pouch as high as I can get them, and then just kind of work the strap down. I originally had it intended for me to be able to just yank on that strap to cinch it down, but obviously you can see when I do that, I just yank the whole hook down, and this whole assembly just kind of rotates. So in order to cinch those down, I have to basically hold this area in place. Okay, let's see if I can do this without the use of a tripod. And then I'd have to pull on that strap. You can see that the hook ends up moving. Then I have to figure out a way with the other pouch in place to work this whole hook and loop back up to the top area of this PALS webbing, and then do the whole thing again without the entire assembly rotating. So bottom line is, it just doesn't work as well as I wanted it to. It works, just not as well as I wanted it to. So some improvements that I'm going to make to this bag in the future are just some strap keepers. I might have mentioned before, I'm going to probably just use some pieces of rubber bicycle inner tube. That way I can just fold these up and stick them inside the inner tube. Keep them out of the way. I might do the same thing here. It's a little bit more complicated on the load lifter straps. And then another thing that I might change if I make another one of these bags is I don't want the double zipper sliders. I put the double zipper sliders on here this time, but I'm realizing that that's overkill. I don't need them to be positioned in the middle, you know. Basically, when I use this bag, I'm going to open the compression straps, I'm going to unzip it all the way, pull the tin out, and zip it back all the way. There's no real reason to have these in any sort of different positions. Also, another problem having two of them is obviously you're going to have extra weight, and if you don't need two zipper sliders, that's wasted weight. And another problem is just noise. You know, these rattle together. You know, when I get around to it, as with my other pouch that I made before, I'm eventually going to cut the zipper tabs off and then just maybe make a paracord zipper pulls that hang down nice and far, that are going to be a lot more silent and easier to use while wearing gloves. One more thing I'm going to change. You might have mentioned I didn't bring up these gear loops sewn onto the duffel bag. Originally, when I sewed these on there, the idea was I kind of had it in my head kind of like Powell's webbing, where when I feed this buckle through the gear loop on the backpack, I then feed it back through this gear loop on the duffel, which in my head made it seemed like it would be a lot more secure. There's actually two more back here that the other side of the strap feeds back through, but that's just way too complicated, and ultimately it's not needed. I thought it would keep the bag in place better, but once you have these buckles connected, this bag isn't going anywhere whether you use these or not. So ultimately, once again, wasted weight and wasted time. So if I make another one of these bags, I'm not putting these on there. I wouldn't bother with them. If you like the idea, you know, you could obviously do that yourself. You just an inch away from the bar tack stitch on the nylon webbing for the compression strap, you would just sew some nylon webbing on there, but I'm not going to bother with it next time. And honestly, I'm probably going to cut these off in the future. What you could do is put a couple of these down here and feed the strap through. That way, as you're disconnecting the strap, you're not having to fumble around for it. It's going to hang right there where you need it. That might be a better use of this nylon webbing. Last thing I'll probably do different next time, I suppose I could still do it on this bag, but I'm probably not going to, is I'm just gonna, I might have mentioned this already, I'm just gonna take a 2-inch piece of nylon webbing, or 2-inch thick piece, and sew it with a couple of box X stitches on either side, and then just make a carry handle. That way this functions better as a gym bag. Obviously, on a traditional gym bag, you would just have one long piece of nylon webbing, you know, that it's basically one big loop, and the loops are, and that one big loop is sewn all the way around the bag, and the ends of the loops just create your handles. But I don't think that would have worked on this particular bag because of the compression straps. But you could still have a simple drag handle or a carry handle just by sewing a piece of webbing across there with some box X stitches rather. So if you plan on doing a project like this of your own, I hope the information in this video was helpful to you.